Of course, this show is about U.S. politics, and I guess you would say news related to politics. And of course, we do a weekend show called The Top Five, which we talk about the top five news stories of the week. Of course, this is the weekend, so it's time to do that. Remember, this show is dedicated to common people, average Joes like yourself, like me, who get up every morning, day after day, night after night, and slug it out to make it happen here in these great United States, right? So it's your job and my job to, well, continue doing what we're doing. But I also like to give you a review on the news. I know you're getting your news from several different sources all over the place. So we just kind of pick some of those stories in order to review them. Um, just so everybody kind of get a flavor as to, well, how we should be looking at things, like hopefully reasonable, right? We want to be reasonable in our approach. So, all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the show because I don't want to hold you too long. Although I will tell you, there's some doozies in this one. So, buckle up. So, that being said, hey, in the number five spot, we have to talk about the Republican debate that took place on Wednesday, right? So, four people on the stage: Ramaswamy, DeSantis, Haley, and Chris Christie, right? So four people on the stage, definitely one front runner. Sorry, that runner was Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley was that front runner. Everyone else was chasing her. Nikki Haley did get an assist from Chris Christie at one point during the debate when Ramaswamy was kind of going in on her. Nikki Haley just kind of sat back and let Chris Christie just kind of do her work for her. So that was interesting to see. You kind of saw that it was Ramaswamy and DeSantis really were trying to knock Nikki off of that pedestal. I don't think they did that. However, I'm going to tell you, give the debate a C. And the reason why I give it a C, a lot of the conversation or discourse that we were hearing about, items that we've already heard before. So when it comes to border security, we knew that Ron DeSantis was going to shoot, what do you say? Shoot the cartel members point blank dead, stuff like that. I don't really know what that means, but obviously they were dead. So that being the case, I mean, the whole issue with fentanyl and some of these issues that they were discussing, in my opinion, and again, I'm trying to be reasonable about that. Everybody thinks that a lot of that's coming in through the southern border. I have another opinion that would suggest to you that if we're only inspecting 5% of U.S. containers, it's more likely that you're going to see fentanyl there, and it's being chopped up and sent all around the United States. So that being said, I don't want to hit the debate too hard. I just said it again. Nikki Haley came out the person that everybody was trailing. Guess what? That was the fourth debate. We're getting ready to head into our first caucus, that being Iowa. That's January the 15th. We'll see exactly what comes out of this. Everybody's chasing Donald Trump, remember? And he's the person that didn't show up. We'll see if there is some impact to him not showing up. So when you look at the race in Iowa, it was a caucus state, right? So if Donald Trump isn't able to get, remember, and he's leading in the polls. I mean, 81% of Republicans are rocking with Donald Trump. There's 20% of them that aren't. That has nothing to do with him, right? Now, if you think, how does that add up when you look at a caucus state? That should say Donald Trump should be running away with the caucus, right? Now, if it turns out that he has a 20% lead, yeah, okay, he's doing well. If that lead is less than 10%, I'm going to tell you that sets up well, especially a candidate like Nikki Haley for New Hampshire and South Carolina. And then, of course, after South Carolina, you have Super Tuesday, where you'll have somewhere close to 70% of the Republican electorate that will have cast a ballot for the presidential contest. So that being the case, if Nikki Haley can stay close, I'm saying if she can get in the second place in Iowa, that's a good thing. If she ends up in winning New Hampshire and South Carolina, Katie bar the door, I think she has momentum and she could flip this script on Donald Trump come by Super Tuesday. By the time you get to Super Tuesday, we can have a different race, people. We can have a different race. So we shall see. And I got to tell you, I already know that Donald Trump is going to come with the name calling with regard to Nikki Haley and the rest of them. But like I've said before, I just don't think that's going to get the same type of traction that it gets when he's going after the males, right? So we'll see how it all turns out. Again, I give this contest, the debate, to Nikki Haley, but let's see Super Tuesday. Sorry, not Super Tuesday, but Iowa's right around the corner. So let's see how everything shakes out. We have an idea. Let's see if it holds. All right, so that's the number 5 story. On to the number 4 story. We got to talk about Hunter Biden. All right, so we know he had already had an indictment in Delaware, right? So this past week, we also learned about his indictment out in California. And it's a tax case, right? So he could serve up to what they say, 17 or 20 years if he's found guilty. Now, I got a question. I see this case, right? And I ask myself, is there something funny about this case? Because when I look at this case, I see a guy who actually paid his tax debt plus the penalty and interest, right? So if he's already paid the tax debt plus the penalty and the interest, why in the world is this case going forward? I do not know. I have a sneaky suspicion that this case will probably end up getting kicked. It's going to get dismissed. And I just don't know I'm not sure where the probative value is. I mean, this isn't, I guess it is a criminal case, right? So I'm not sure where the probative value is because um, again, he's paid his debt. So, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about Wesley Snipes, right? So if you think about the Wesley Snipes case where he went to jail for not 17 years, right? And actually, Wesley owed more money than what Hunter Biden owes right now, or owed back then, right? So if you look at it, Wesley went to jail for 3 years. They're saying Hunter should go to the jail for 20. I'm not seeing. And remember, I mean, Wesley left 3 years in prison, right? And he still has a tax debt of somewhere around $9 or $10 million. So this case here just kind of smells funny to me. I mean, and a lot of people will say that it's politically motivated. I'll try to reserve some judgment for that. But if this case ends up getting kicked, I think that the special counsel probably shouldn't have never brought the case, right? But if he brought the case, he probably had to do it because he was getting so much pressure from Republicans. And if Republicans are giving him so much pressure, it's because, again, I think they want to dirty up Biden as much as they possibly can. And they have to. And the reason why is because Donald Trump has 91 counts hanging over him. So in order to make it look even comparable, you got to dirty up the Bidens in order to make that case. So Hunter Biden, I mean, he's already wrote a book and told us about all of his misgivings, but everybody wants to hear the dirty laundry, I guess. I mean, I don't really care that he paid for some hookers and he spent money and some other stuff. What do you expect him to do? I mean, and I think anybody who has ever filed their taxes late, you know that there's going to be some penalty and there's going to be some interest. I'm not sure exactly where that crosses the line to evading taxes, especially when a person's already paid the debt, the tax debt, right? Plus the penalty, plus the interest. So I don't understand where this case is going. Interested in seeing how fast it takes for it to get kicked. If I were an attorney, and I'm not, I would be making a motion right now to have this case dismissed. It's a frivolous case because there's really, what do you want to learn? So, and that's what it is. I mean, I think what you end up learning is everything we already know. Hunter already told us about all this stuff in his book. So I'm not sure what there is to learn. So anyway, that's the number 4 case. Hunter Biden. The California case about tax evasion that isn't But we'll see exactly how it all turns out. So that's the number 4 case, or the number 4 story. In the number 3 spot, we got to talk about my favorite topic, people: Bidenomics. So what's going on with Bidenomics? Okay, so look, this is the month of December. We just saw the jobs numbers come out for the month of November, and what did we see? We saw 199 million jobs. Sorry, 199,000 jobs created. So some people said that was a meager report. I'm going to tell you that report is actually not that bad. Remember, our strike point is anything above 150 to 170, right? We're at 199. So that number is a really good number. And why do we say 150 to 170? We want to be creating about 2 million jobs a year based on this size economy. It's a very dynamic economy, so 2 million jobs is what it should be creating. And we're above schedule this year. That number, 199, looks pretty good. Now, to follow that number up, there was the Michigan survey that was released also Friday afternoon. And remember, we talked about the Michigan survey. It's one of my 5. Remember my 5 reports that I look at? I look at the employment picture. I look at GDP. I look at consumer confidence. I look at the Michigan survey, and I look at the inflation. Those 4, yeah, those 5 happen to be where I hang my hat on and say, okay, is this economy doing what it needs to do, or is it not? All right, so the Michigan survey comes out. They tell us that the American people are starting to look different about this economy. They're starting to look at it and see that they're doing a little bit better than what they were thinking they were doing, right? So those numbers are starting to turn around. And I told you before, Michigan survey and consumer confidence appear to be a lagging indicator. So as these other indicators like GDP and jobs and inflation, as they are trending in the right direction, we're starting to see the American people come along for this ride. And like I may have said in the previous broadcast about Bidenomics, I believe by the end of the first quarter, the American people will start to give Joe Biden some credit for the economy. All right, so 2 good numbers came out so far. We got a few other numbers to get before the end of this month before we can look at the month of November and say, hey, man, things are doing great. So we had the month of September, the month of October, and now the month of November. When it comes to jobs, we're doing pretty good. Can't complain. All right, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Okay, so if you are the Biden administration, I'm going to tell you, look, these numbers look great. We're probably, when it comes to the pandemic, we were at about 157 million jobs. During the pandemic, it went down to about 133 million jobs. Now we're at about 162 million jobs. So roughly after the pandemic, we're probably at a place where we've created somewhere between 3 to 4 million jobs over the past 3 years. Now, that's not a bad number. But remember what I said earlier. We want to be creating somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 million jobs a year. So we're a little off cycle. However, not that far. And remember, my benchmark goes all the way back to what happened before 2007. If we can get back to that benchmark, then I would say, hey, everything's green light. The economy's doing great. Everybody should be hunky dory. We're not there yet. Now, position wise, we're better than what we were 4 years ago, but that's not saying much. Okay. But still trending in the right direction. So before everybody in the Biden administration started jumping up and down and thinking that we're on easy street, we're not there yet. So, and remember, you still have those tariffs hanging over you. If you want to get this economy really kicked in and kicked up, get rid of those tariffs, and that will definitely help the American people. That will definitely help the consumer confidence and the Michigan survey. All right. So all that being said, that's Bidenomics. What do we know about Bidenomics? Well, guess what? Is it working? We got some good numbers, but It's still too early to tell. And guess what? I mean, I always say it hasn't blown up anything yet. And that is the case. So, all right, look, we've had the number 5 story. We talked about the debate, the Republican debate. The number 4 story, we came in and talked about Hunter Biden. And I think there's going to be a dismissal in this case. Should happen in the first or second quarter of this year. If we get to June, that case should be gone. It really should be, because there's really, I don't think there's a whole lot to see there. Then, of course, let's talk about Bidenomics. We're doing okay. It hasn't blown up anything yet, but everybody pump the brakes before everybody starts jumping up and celebrating, because we're still a little bit off cycle. All right. When we talk about the number 2 story, we got to talk about aid to both Ukraine and to Israel. All right. So I told you, when we got that CR done, when Johnson was able to get that CR across the line, we know that the CR comes up again in January, and also a second part of that will come up in the month of February of next year. I told you that it's highly unlikely that they will be able to get some type of supplemental done that would take care of both the Ukraine and Israel. And of course, this past week, what we saw was that things were moving a lot slower than what they should have moved in the Senate, right? And things are just really just, I mean, it's not even on the radar in the House. I mean, this aid package is going nowhere. 105 or 110 million or $1 billion worth of aid to Israel and to Ukraine. Not on the table in the House. It got stalled out in the Senate. So we got about a week, people. By the end of next week, if they don't have a deal done, I'm here to tell you we're not going to get it done before the end of the year. So Israel and Ukraine will go into the holiday season without having that aid package in place. Now, I'm going to tell you, when I look back at the debate, and I echo the sentiment of what Nikki Haley had to say. Nikki Haley made the comment that when it comes to this aid, they need this aid package, right? And she said that there is an axis between Russia and Iran, and China, right? And I believe she's right. And she made the comment that Putin was on the back foot, so to speak. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff broke out in Israel. And the stuff in Israel, trust me, China is taking a look at what's going on with Taiwan. She's absolutely correct in how she sees that geopolitical picture, right? That will be, if there was a conflict to break out, it will be between those 3 parties. That will be the sponsors of it, right? So when it comes to Ukraine, I'm here to tell you, go back 100 years if you want to, but Russia was battling for this same real estate back then, and Poland, right? So, and Poland's right on the doorstep there. So if you think about it, if you don't stop this now, what I'm here to tell you is that you're going to have a bigger problem later. So, and what I mean by stop, you need to throw everything in the kitchen sink at making sure that Russia can't take any more pieces of Ukraine. If you cannot do that, I can guarantee you it may not be next week, it may not be 5 years, but it will be somewhere over the next 10 to 15 years. You're going to be embroiled in a greater conflict in that particular area of the world. And the reason why I say that is because if you can't support Ukraine, it makes it hard for NATO to support Ukraine. And if it's hard for NATO to support Ukraine, it makes it hard on the U.S. and its foreign policy objectives to have NATO membership. They can't trust America. That's just a fact. They can't trust America because the divisions in America are so great that the obvious things aren't that obvious anymore. So you should want to assist your ally. And whether you like it or not, Ukraine, you've been giving them aid for the past 2 years. They are your ally. All right. So if you decide you don't want to give them any aid, I'm going to tell you, That's bad for the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian military. It will be demoralizing. Okay, it just will be. And the notions of a peace treaty or some type of negotiation, it's demoralizing, right? So, and that's what you'll see. And because of that, they won't be able to trust us. And I believe that rest of Europe won't be able to trust us either. I heard today, I think it was earlier today, no, yesterday, I heard that you had um, NATO members already trying to fill out a future Trump administration and what that would look like. I mean, if Trump doesn't want to be a part of NATO, I think the NATO countries will oblige us. Okay. And the reason why I say that, you have a bipolar partner in the United States. One minute they're for you, the next minute they're against you. And that's not a happy relationship. So that being said, again, I think that ultimately bodes, well, it's dubious all the way around. And there's really no other way to put it. And when it comes to Israel, look, this is a tough one. And the reason why I think it's tough is because we already know that there are divisions politically when it comes to U.S. support for Israel in this particular situation. I have said and gone on record myself saying that Israel deserves a right to self-determination. So I support the fact that they want to go in and root out Hamas. Now, I do not and do have a problem with the Israeli IDF just wholesalely blowing up everything. That's a problem. And I've said it before on another broadcast that what you'll end up seeing is somewhere between 20 to 25,000 people lost versus 1,400 Israelis. Big difference. And at the end of the day, Palestine deserved the same right to self-determination as Israel. They just do. And it makes for a sticky topic. So I know there will be Democrats on one side, especially on the far right side, that will not want to ride with President Biden with this one. But I mean, it's my estimation you have to. I mean, we hope that they end up getting it right, but that's a hope. And I think that's really a pipe dream because I don't think Israel has any notions of doing anything but pushing the Palestinian people, especially the Gazan group, out into the sea. Because I don't see, it's not possible. It's physically not going to be possible to root out Hamas the way they're dug in with the Palestinian or the Gazan people. All right. It's just not possible. So wholesale blowing up everything, that's what you're left with. It's just the truth. So it's going to be a sticky topic. But again, I believe in Israel's ability to self-determination as much as I believe in the Palestinian people's position to self-determination as well. I just know it's a problem. It's going to be a really big problem. But anyway, back to the aid package. I don't think it's a 70-30 chance that this aid package fails during the month of December. We'll probably get around to it during the month of January, but they're already running out of munitions. And I just think it'll be demoralizing over the winter months. And the Ukrainians will have to, I think that conflict could be over with by the end of the first quarter of 2024. And I think the victors will be the Russians. They got a manpower deficiency. I mean, Russia can just throw too many bodies at that equation that the Ukrainians don't have. So That being said, again, doesn't bode well for us. The package stalls out the end of this year. We probably get around to it at the beginning of next year, but it really won't matter. And of course, the Israeli piece was, we'll find a way in order to get them aid, but they're in a much different situation than the Ukrainians are. So anyway, so that, folks, is the number 3 story. No, that's the number 2 story. The number 2 story. So we talked about the Republican debate. We talked about Hunter Biden. We talked about Bidenomics, and we've talked about this U.S. aid package to Ukraine and to Israel. The only thing left to talk about, folks, is the number 1 story, and it's a doozy too. Kind of follows the same track as this U.S. aid. We got to talk about what happened at the during the subcommittee meeting at the House of Representatives, which saw 3 of our prominent universities being grilled by Representative Elise Stefanik from the great state of New York. She asked a pretty poignant question, and it was interesting, their answers. So I'm going to play that video, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Dr. Kornbluth, yes. At MIT, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate MIT's code of conduct or rules regarding bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
If targeted at individuals, not making public statements.
Yes or no? Calling for the genocide of Jews does not constitute bullying and harassment?
I have not heard calling for the genocide for Jews on our campus.
But you've heard chants for intifada.
I've heard chants, which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context, when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
So those would not be according to the MIT's code of conduct or rules?
That would be investigated as harassment if pervasive and severe.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it if the
yes
speech
or
becomes
no?
If the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes. And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, targeted at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
Okay. All right. So telling you. Okay. Let me try to handle this appropriately. First of all, I hate it. Well, I can't say I hate it. Actually, I somewhat enjoy it when people try to obfuscate, right? Because that tells me that there's something going on that I need to be aware of. So let me first answer the question that she's asking. She's asking if calling for the, extermination or genocide of the Jews, if that is a violation of the school's code of conduct. The answer to that question is yes. But there's a follow-up answer to go with that. Because as the president of these universities are trying to say, there is a context. Now, when when Elise Stefanik talks about intifada, intifada means rise up. And of course, intifada, we can go all the way back to 1967 and what that actually means or how you should interpret that. They're saying that the Palestinian people should rise to their defense, right? That was the context then. Can we say that that's the context now? Well, you had Hamas perpetrate a crime on the Jewish people, and the Jewish people have a right to respond. They do. But the way in which they are responding, there's no doubt in my mind or anybody else that does foreign policy, you're creating more Hamas at the end of the day, or you're creating not allies, you're creating more enemies in this particular case. It's hard to listen to because I understand probably both sides of this equation, but I also have to look at it from a different lens too, because, and I'm not picking on Representative Stefanik, all right, but I can tell you that there are segments of the Republican Party that go out on witch hunts about CRT and wokeness and the rest. And I can say that, she's not concerned one bit about those items or those people, right? But she has a passion for the Jewish people. That's what she's saying, right? And this is where I look at these conversations, because in certain respects, you have to, it just must be pointed out that some of the arguments are not, they're not linear in nature. So you can't just connect one dot and connect another dot, and all of these dots are on the same linear line. Because on one hand, she's going to ride hard on these professors and these presidents, right, about how they feel about the notion and the context of intifada in particular, because she brought that up specifically, right, and genocide of the Jewish people. I am not here, like I told you, the answer to the question is yes, but there is a context. So, for example, I'll give you a context. What if I, along with my Jewish friends, are sitting around and someone overhears us talking about genocide of the Jewish people? Should I be disciplined for that? Contextually, I'm talking to a group of people about a particular issue. So it does have a context. There's no doubt about it. There's a context there. But again, and it just seems so, it's not lost on me that the same individual, and not Gwen in particular, or sorry, I keep saying Gwen, but Miss Stefanik in particular, these are the same people who have an issue with CRT, which isn't being talked about in your elementary school and your under your even at the undergrad level. It's not even being, but we have a problem with that. And we have a problem with 1619 project, which anybody in their right mind, reasonably, okay, you don't have 1776 if you don't have 1619. It's common sense. 1619 is what makes 1776 possible. Right? So, but those individuals would have you to believe that, we shouldn't talk about that because people will get their feelings hurt. It seems somewhat disingenuous to me. I understand the question, and I did answer yes to the question, but I will follow up and say there is a context. Now, maybe those presidents of those universities couldn't say that or couldn't think about that at the time or weren't. And you know what? I got to tell you, I didn't watch all of it. They probably did come back later. Some of them did. Sounds like the Harvard professor was tuning up to that. But, I think, the Penn professor resigned. And I would imagine the other two will probably end up resigning as well. But I think that you have to say there is a context. I'm just trying to button this up. But I'm going to tell you this. I was talking to friends of mine about this topic. Friends and family, really. And I was asking the question, or not really asking the question. I was making the point that it seems to me, and I'm trying to be reasonable about this, right? It seems to me that at our basic level, as humans, right, especially people who live in the existence that we live in, this world that we live in today, there's two overriding factors. You want to be able to make a living, to be able to take care of your family, and this is number two, you want your posterity to be able to enjoy that and be able to take care of themselves later. Those are two overriding principles that us as humans, as we exist today, that we are looking at. Our preservation. Ultimately, that's what I call it, our preservation. Now, when it comes to our skin color and our differences, all of us come to this from different experiences. There's no doubt about that. All of us have different experiences. None of those experiences should be discounted. Those experiences make us all better. And at the end of the day, I understand what anti-Semitism means. And I, for one, believe in the experience of those Jewish people. I have to. I grew up the son of an evangelist, right? I probably, I know those stories better than they do, but I can tell you right now, I know those stories. I know where they come from. So I value their experience. I value their hardships and the lessons that we have learned throughout history because of what happened. Should teach us all to do better, right? You know, there's a scripture in Isaiah that says, come, let us all reason together. And reasonable people, we can sit around and we can and say that, yes, context is important. It is also important that we do not want genocide of anybody, right? So that up front, letting us, and then let you know about the context, how important it is. But I will also tell you that reasonable people can look at what's happening in Israel in regard to the Palestinian people in Gaza right now. And I should be able to point to as many Jewish people who will tell you that that's not cool either. Because it's not. And that's the point. That's what we need to get to. We're not there yet. That's why, that scripture is very important. Come, let us reason together. As many, United States is bent on regime change in many different circles, right? But I didn't see any regime change out of the United States when it comes to the issue of the Palestinian state. I don't see that. So I find that interesting. And I guess I should also say I find it interesting that, most people will point to, and I'm just going to talk about let's talk about the last 15, 20 years, okay? Let's talk about 2007 to today. We did see the Israelis move out of the Gaza Strip. We did see that. And we did see that the Palestinian people in Gaza, and they decided to elect Hamas. We also saw that once Hamas was in control, we haven't seen an election since then. But we haven't seen, and as much as the Israeli people can say that, once we left there, we left there. We never saw any regime change. We never saw the Israeli people try to foment some discontent with Hamas in order to bring people in that will make the situation right. Didn't see that. So there appears to be a context here that would say the Israeli people really don't want that. They want that enemy. And ever since leaving 2007, you have to point to the fact that Israel's had their hand on the scale, inspecting their goods. And I understand that. I do. But there never was a context in which they were trying to change the political dynamic there. And you got to say they have the power within them to be able to do that. So you have to ask yourself the question, why? And I think there are some hard answers on the other side of that why that ultimately we just don't want to deal with. And that's sad. So, folks, end of our show today. I'm sorry. I think I may be over 30 minutes. But at the end of the day, I just want us all to be mindful of one another. We're all brothers. And we have to come to some conclusions. And we have to come to some conclusions that are to everyone's interest. I don't know. That just may be me, true believer in the notion that we all should be able to get along. I think my guy Rodney King said, "Can't we all just get along?" Right? But at the end of the day, it seems quite evident that we can't until we can. So I still hold out hope that there is some resolution. And I've been saying it ever since, this topic of Israel and Gaza, I just don't like talking about, because I know once I can look down that road and tell you where we're headed, nobody wants to go. So all that being said, folks, that's our top 5 for the night. next week, guess what? I got a little bit more free time. So we're going to start putting more shorts in the can and putting some more shorter videos out there. Definitely have a lot that we want to say with regard to the politics in the United States and with regard to foreign policy and with regard to economics. There's a lot of conversations to be had. And I look forward to being able to give you some information, hopefully with some context, right? That helps all of us be able to think about these particular issues. And that's about all I have for tonight, folks. So I want you to enjoy yourself. It's Sunday, right? Sunday morning. So go out there Sunday, enjoy a few football games, enjoy whatever it is that you're going to do today. Tomorrow's the beginning of a work week. So we're right back at it. So, folks, enjoy yourself. Hope you enjoy the show. Look forward to doing the next one.